how's it going? How does it feel to finally have this out here in the world?
It's just so exciting to be able to share this with an even wider audience. Doing this play that summer in New York in 2018 was such a joy, and to then be given the opportunity to put it on Netflix and take it global it's a dream. Quinto.
I agree. I mean, it's such a unique experience to do a play and to have all of this time to relate to one another and to excavate these characters and then come back to them a year later. It's just I think Matt Bomer said it best, which is I never want to do a movie again that didn't have a fully realized Broadway production ahead of it, you know. So yeah, it was pretty special, and now that we get to share it with so many more people, I think that's the biggest joy for all of us, is that you know, yeah, people get to see it.
And I guess it's during a time when there's lockdown and venues are closed, it's sort of the biggest possible sort of way of showing just how valuable the performing arts are during a pandemic. And how has it felt for you guys seeing all these venues shut up and theatres on Broadway and over here closed down?
Oh, it's the worst. I feel like, you know, there's a lot of obviously really horrifying aspects to this experience. But for me, the impact that this has had on the theater is one of the most devastating from a cultural perspective. You know, it's I get hit with these waves of memories of either going to the theater to perform or going to the theater to be in the audience, and just the energy of that and the joy of that. It's one of those visceral memories that really yeah, it just takes the wind out of my sails when I think about it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is challenging right now, but just the impact that this is going to have on the theater and how and when it's going to come back, and it's unsettling. It's sad. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I've made a point to see how some of these companies or some theaters are trying to adjust to current circumstances and stay afloat with Zoom performances and stuff. And the creativity on display is hopeful. I think the theater community is resilient, and theater in America and in the UK are resilient. They will come back. But like Zach said, it's also sad to just know so many people who are struggling in an industry that was sort of difficult to begin with. So hope for the best. Wear a mask. We all need to get back in there soon.
And for you guys, you're both incredible, both on stage and on screen. So how has it been sort of being able to take on these roles in very different forms and having to sort of process them in different ways?
I play a character who is nothing if not aloof and kind of, you know, when you're doing a play, your responsibility as an actor is to make sure that every choice you make lands at the back of the theater, and that's all well and good. But for a character like Harold to be able to explore him on film, I think is much more in line with the energy of who he is, right? Just letting things come to him, having these observations from across the room. Part of his joy, part of the joy of him as a character is in his in the things he says under his breath, or the kind of looks that he gives, and those all live so much more fully on film than they ever can on stage. That said, doing the play was an amazing experience as well. So I don't know, it's hard to say which is one is not better than the other, but they're both really unique for sure.
Yeah, and the fun of getting to do both. I mean, what a kind of a challenge, but what a joy to play around with something you're familiar with in two different mediums. With Cowboy, it was new for me to have a character who well, I would like to think gave so many laughs in New York. The theater to have that relationship with the audience. And then so to have had that experience on stage in New York and then be asked to transpose it onto film, one of the big relationships I built suddenly wasn't there. So it was about in this new reality that we were creating together, this filmic reality. You know, how do you tell the truth, and how do you trust that the character is kind of communicating and being communicated?
The film was incredible. I mean, I sat there with transfixed last night, and I think the poignancy of the ending in particular, the fact that you added on this huge montage, it was spellbinding. So thank you so much for creating that.
Thank you.
When did the project get going, and how did that all happen? Sort of bringing it from Broadway to the screen.
Yeah, I think Ryan had the idea. Gosh, I should look this up, but I think it was probably about 3.5 years ago. And the first steps, we did a couple of reading workshops, two, with most of the cast that you see in the film now. And but it was always his intention that it would culminate with a new version of the film.
And I guess that leads nicely into the next question in terms of, I think, especially during the pandemic, we've seen this new relationship between streaming platforms and Broadway and theatre. How does it feel being a part of that process?
Say it again, Alex. I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. I guess there's been a new sort of relationship forming between streaming platforms and theatre, especially during this pandemic at the moment. How does it feel being a part of that process?
You mean in terms of this particular film? Well, I think it's in some way it's perhaps the best of both worlds, in the sense that you know, what you are seeing is some version of certainly the performances that were given on Broadway, but you don't have to endure them on a Zoom meeting call, you know. Which I mean, look, at the beginning, like everybody else, I was incredibly grateful that there was that kind of access. I'm finding out that I'm a little bit more frustrated with it now, though it's, you know, I'll definitely take it. But so perhaps this is the best of both worlds.
And did obviously Mark Cowley passed away earlier this year. Did he ever visit you on set? Did he give some advice, or even during the Broadway production?
Mart was very much a part of both the Broadway revival and the film. You know, he was really he did visit us on the set for about a week, and so though it's you know, it's heartbreaking that he never got to see the final version. I think that he got to see enough that he you know, I think he would have been proud of what we made. But he was an incredibly generous man and a wonderful collaborator, and he really trusted all of us and encouraged all of us to find our own way through it. And he was there just off to the side as someone who was a resource, a cheerleader, godfather. But we adored him. And I don't know if you know Mark, but he has a really tiny little, there's a little part of the film where you see him. We put him in the scene at the very beginning when Andrew Reynolds is sitting in the bar talking to that young man. And at the end of the bar, you see Mart, and he's in a couple of shots. And so he, not only is his spirit infused the film, but he's actually there forever. So that's a wonderful little thing, little nod to him.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and also for the brilliant film. I was in awe, and thank you for giving that to us. And hopefully we'll see you work back on stage relatively soon, given the current predicament.
Thanks. I'm usually in London about this time of year, once a year, and it's really heartbreaking not to be there. I love it so much, well, but
fingers
hopefully
crossed
next
the
year.
Venues will be, yeah, we're already slowly opening up, so I'm sure there'll be something
I hear,
next time you're here. Lovely to see you guys. I was saying earlier that it feels strange in a way that I've literally been watching you a few hours ago on the same screen, and now I'm seeing you a few decades later on the same screen. How does it feel that you're probably in the most well-rehearsed Netflix film in a very long time, right? Coming soon?
I'll tell you how it felt doing it, which was absolutely remarkable. I've said it 1,000 times, but Matt Bomer is the one during it says, I never want to do a film again that I didn't do a full Broadway run of. And it was true. The experience of having that much experience and time spent with these characters in this story and with each other, I've never had any other experience like that on stage or on camera. Coming at something like this with that much behind you already was so rewarding, and I'll always remember that.
And there was also none of the sort of, how are we going to do this, or who am I saying this line to, or I'm not sure why I really bring this up, because we had done that work in the theater, you know, and so it was really, there was a shorthand and an understanding and a trust, and different options that we had, you know, in terms of different takes that Joe could use in the end to you know, get the film that he wanted.
And for you, Michael, you had one of the most beautiful unscripted moments in the film in terms of adding all that extra context with the swimming pool. And how is it having all those extra moments that you could really sort of, that weren't in Mart's original script, that now are sort of visible to millions of people?
Well, that's Joe Mantello all the way. I mean, he has an imagination, and a very poetic one. Our screenwriter, Ned Martell, also, and Mr. Murphy, just them passing that script around themselves. Ned was in every single rehearsal for Broadway. He was on set every single day. So he found these nuances that each one of us needed to open up the story in the most appropriate way. And that gorgeous moment that Joe saw in his head, and he invited me to go and watch the film before we did the phone call, so we were in complete tandem. It was, I mean, that was probably the luckiest break for me in that movie.
I mean, for me personally, I had to go and get a tissue because I was just crying so much from how beautiful it was. And I think that, and it must be so exciting that there is sort of this new form. And why do you think that there's such a beautiful relationship now evolving between sort of streaming platforms and the performing arts and Broadway that sort of hadn't really been as defined as it has been since the pandemic, I don't think?
Man, it's cool. I'm all for more of it. I think it's so great. I mean, and the fact that we all got to do the film is really unprecedented, actually. I mean, it almost never has happened, you know, besides filming something like Hamilton, where it was that cast that did it. But most films will then be done by different actors or some of the same actors. So, you know, from my experience, to get to do a film of something that we all got to do on Broadway was just incredibly satisfying, gratifying. And, you know, I'm grateful for that time. Always will be.
And for you, for you, Jim, I mean, sort of, you've been sort of branching out into these roles because I think obviously a lot of people this side of the Atlantic would probably have known you more from The Big Bang Theory, and sort of to sort of redefine yourself as an actor this end, that must have been quite a fun thing to be able to do. And actually this role, just like I was saying with Michael, there was some just, it was destroying at the end, sort of seeing you run off like that.
Yeah, it was very, it's been one of the most fortunate things that's happened to me was getting asked to do this, both on stage and in the film. And partly at a personal level, just I was ready in my life to explore a character like this, but definitely in reference to the character I'd been playing for 12 years, it was like working a whole new set of muscles that I had not been allowed to touch for a long time, it felt like. And that's important, I think, for any actor to get the chance to do things like that. So I'm just very grateful, I have to say, obviously to Mart for having written this at all, but for Joe and for Ryan, who have been two angels to me, really, as far as giving me things to do and ways to expand myself as an actor.
Huge congratulations. It must be amazing finally seeing this out there in front of everyone after having this in your lives for a few years.
Super thrilling. We've had so much fun, and we've been marinating with the story for so long. So to release it to the world is like, it's really beautiful and a privilege.
Were there any sort of chances for you to re-examine your characters, you know, after doing it on Broadway and then taking it onto the big screen? And what were the key differences that you noticed?
Well, it's such a different medium, and so many moments that were maybe played for 1,000 people a night were suddenly in an intimate close-up. So we were just very lucky to have a phenomenal director in Joe Mantello, who knew how to help us modulate certain aspects of the performance and really treat each take like a rehearsal with this incredible group of actors that we love and had an inherent sense of trust with. I loved it. We're so lucky. I don't know how many actors in the world get to do the same piece in different mediums. So it's one of my favorite parts of this experience that we got to do that together.
And obviously, it was sad that Mark passed away just before the lockdown and the pandemic. But did he give you individually any sort of tips or advice when you're working on the show or on the film? Sort of, did he come up to you and whisper you in your ear or something, or steer you in certain directions?
What was so wonderful about Mart was how involved he was throughout this really 2 to 3 year process. And I know he wrote each of us individual emails. We spent time with him after shows at Sardi's. He entertained us with stories of the past. And for it all to culminate with him winning a Tony Award for a play he wrote 50 years prior as a revival, I really think it came full circle for him, and he really appreciated it. And we were so lucky to stand next to him while he did that.
Yeah, and I would just say one of the great things about Mart, I don't know if you want to chime in, Robin, but he's so confident as an artist. It was very similar with Larry Kramer, where they trust the artists who are telling their story and telling their version of the story. So they're available to you if you have any questions or you want to talk about characters or rap about anything, really. But they also trust the creative artists on the team who are there to do the version of their story that they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Mart was he reached out to all of us, and we got to hang out with him a bunch, and we talked about our characters. But I think like the biggest gift he gave us was his spirit, in the sense that, you know, it'd been 50 years since he wrote this play, and now he was finally getting his due. And whenever there was an event we were going to go to, like, Mart was going to be there early. Mart was going to be at that event, and he was going to live and thrive and take that moment. And that was so endearing and so beautiful and so positive. And I want to be like him when I grow up.
Yes.
I want to stay in that gratitude and in that joy, and always, you know, still be a nerd for this thing that we love, which is theater.
Yeah, I would echo that and just say, you know, this is a play about this generation of men who don't have role models, and Mart ended up becoming the greatest role model you could hope for, and it's because of all the things that Robin's saying, his joy, his positivity, his spirit.
And why do you think that the piece is so timely now, given the present circumstances?
Well, our producer, Ryan Murphy, said early on, we need more stories about LGBTQ history. We just do. And this is a story of our history. We need to know where we came from to appreciate how we live in the present and how we can live in the future.
I think it's also a story about the cost of oppression and what it means and what it does to people when society is oppressing who they are and their voice. And I think we're seeing that resonate a lot in the world today. And on a positive note, I think we also realize how much we owe to Mart and the original cast, who 50 years ago really put their careers on the line to tell this story. And it's a testament to how far we've come that we have these 9 gentlemen in this cast, all of whom are openly gay, all of whom I feel have great careers. And it's a testament. We still have a long way to go, but it's a real positive sign of how far we've come that we can tell the story in the way we're doing it today.
Totally. I want to piggyback off of that, Matt, because, you know, my career started already out of the closet, and I wouldn't have been able to have the career I have today starting out as an out gay man if it weren't for all the work that my gay ancestors did, you know? So that is a massive privilege that I want to reap all the benefits of.
Thank you guys for an incredible film. It was beautiful, like really spellbinding. Have a lovely rest of the day.